Hello, everyone. Welcome. It is Tuesday, September 14th, 2021. I am Sally Blue Sister, and this is my turn to talk. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. Okay, so let's get started. Today, the topic is what is terrorism? What is terrorism? Is it blowing up restaurants, hotels, and shopping malls? Is it intentionally flying a plane into buildings? Or can terrorism be classified when a person or persons purposely harass mentally and physically another individual? What is terrorism to you? Now, there are a couple of definitions of terrorism. Okay. And there's also a controversy on what terrorism is. Some people believe that one definition is the unlawful use of force or violence against persons or property to intimidate or coerce a government or its citizens to further certain political or social objectives. Okay? Law enforcement generally recognizes two types of terrorism: domestic and international. But there is a controversy on defining what terrorism is. Um, you know, is terrorism, you know, the use of violence from anyone? Could some people in law enforcement be considered terrorists? Can some people in the military be considered terrorists? You know, can someone who is abusing their, spouse or their children, are they considered terrorists? Would you consider that bully in school, that bully in third grade who physically hurts another classmate, would you consider them a terrorist? And right now, there is a controversy on what terrorism is, and that controversy has increased since 2017. After what happened in Charlottesville. So, when the government says the war on terror, who are we talking about? Are we talking about the Taliban? Or, can it be closer to home? So, what is terrorism? We have various agencies who directly associate terrorism with government, anything dealing with the government. So would you say January 6th was terrorism? Last summer with the protests, where some people took it upon themselves to break windows and burn things. In some cases, burning buildings. Is that considered terrorism? Is a police officer shooting someone in the back who's running away, is that terrorism? Is Derek Chauvin putting his knee on George Floyd's neck? Is that considered terrorism? There are many, many different definitions, and various countries around the world, they have their own um, definition of terrorism. Now, I was reading where the U.S. Army Manual, their definition of terrorism is the calculated use of unlawful violence or threat of unlawful violence in order to produce fear. Now, that's a person's definition of terrorism. So, when you think of everything that's going on in this world, and again, I came up with this topic because of everything that was going on this past weekend with 9/11, and people were talking about, listening to their stories on what happened that day, and it's interesting to me how people view that day in different ways. Some people were directly affected because they saw someone, or they knew someone close to them, someone close to them, lost their life that day. Other people, we just saw it on television. You saw it from afar. For me, I was on the West Coast. I had friends living in New York, and I was making those phone calls. Are you okay? Where do you work? And fortunately, everyone answered the phone. They said they were fine. They did not work at the Trade Center. But in the last 4 or 5 years, terrorism has become more prominent in our society. And not so much where we're looking at people across the sea, across the ocean. We're not looking at terrorists from afar. We're looking at terrorism right here at home. And we have groups that have formed, or groups that have always been there, but now are outing themselves, who could be classified as terrorists. And I come back to, my question about that bully. Hello, Crucible Man. I come back to that, bully in school. Be that bully, male or female, teacher, whatever. And they're physically harming or mentally harming another student. Is that terrorism? And I bring that up because the other day I was out walking one of my dogs, and it was around the time, it was early in the morning. People were dropping their kids off at school. And I kind of stopped because I'm watching this one little boy. He must have been probably about 7, just yell and scream at this other little boy, and he's pushing him. And then the teachers had to run over and tell him to stop and what have you. And I was already thinking about 9/11, what have you. And it just popped in my mind. I'm like, is that little boy a terrorist? So again, the definition of a terrorist, you know, I don't think that you can have one particular um, definition that terrorist is someone that's going to be from the Taliban or something like that. I mean, terrorists come in all shapes and sizes. You know, they're everywhere. And that's why I ask. I think some people in law enforcement are terrorists. I think you have some priests, and people who are in the church who are terrorists. If you're, you know, molesting someone, can that be considered a terrorist act because you're physically harming someone? I mean, that is part of the definition of terrorism. So, Crucible Man, you came in after I started my whole monologue. So I'm just going to pick up where I left off, and I am going to ask you, do you want to add anything before I keep going? If not, I will keep going. Okay, I'm going to keep going. All right, so again, for the U.S. Army manual, the definition of terrorism is the calculated use of unlawful violence or threat of unlawful violence to incur fear. It is intended to coerce or intimidate governments or societies to attain political, religious, or ideological goals. No, you are not on mute. I don't see you on at all. Let me send you an invite and see if you can come on this way. Okay, there you go. Hold on. There you go. Okay, and then the FBI definition of terrorism is the unlawful use of force or violence against persons or property to intimidate or coerce the government, the civilian population, or any segment thereof to further a political or social objective. So, Crucible Man, what do you have to say?
Well, I think there's a little bit of a slippery slope when it comes to defining terrorism, because similar to, I guess, not to get into a racial conversation, but if everything is racism, then technically nothing is racism. So if everything is terrorism, then nothing is terrorism. So I do agree with you on the premise that terrorists and terrorism comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes, and you can make a case for that little boy, no matter his age. If you're using fear or the threat of violence against anyone or anything as a way to intimidate or coerce them into doing something against their will, that is a form of terrorism. I think bullying in this instance would probably be the more appropriate word, but I think it's a little bit dangerous to be quick to label everything terrorism, because it kind of dilutes the teeth of the word, and so it kind of waters down the actual, when there actually is terrorism, you get into a little bit of a boy who cried wolf scenario, maybe.
Okay, so before you came on, I also was saying that right now there is a controversy on the word and on the definition. Some people think terrorism is one thing, some people think is another. Different countries classify it, in different ways. But let's go to that bully part. So, okay, you don't want to call a 7-year-old, 5-year-old, 12-year-old a terrorist. But in today's society, the word bully, it doesn't seem like it's, the word, the bullies of today are worse than the bullies of yesterday. I mean, when I went to school, I mean, a bully was someone who said, "Oh, you look stupid. Your mother dresses you funny," something like that. But today's bullies, they take it to a new level, and a lot of it has to do with social media. They can go on social media and they can, talk about someone, call them all kinds of names, post photos of them, where it's to the point where some people are bullying people to the point, and I'm mainly talking about children in school, where kids are going home and they're killing themselves. So is that person a bully, or are they like teetering on the terrorist side?
Well, I think kids that age are probably not capable of fully appreciating what the word terror means in terms of inflicting it on another human being. I do agree with you. Bullying is probably 10 times worse than it was when we were kids, and social media is the primary culprit. But I think any scenario where one human being is intimidating another human being by using some kind of threat of violence, I think it borders on instilling terror in that other person. Is it terrorism as we've come to know it across the world in the geopolitical sphere? Probably not. But to that person, 7 or 8 years old, experiencing something they've probably never experienced before, and they're feeling terror, it is kind of in the eye of the beholder. I can't sit here and say what you feel in terms of terror would be the same that I would feel. So I guess I'm a little bit contradicting myself as far as everything can't be terrorism, but you can have your own personal view of what constitutes terror in your heart.
Okay. Let me ask this. About 2 years ago, I think it made the national news. I'm not sure. About 2 years ago, there was a young boy in California, and I want to say he was in sixth grade, and these other two boys after school came out, and they started picking a fight with him. And these two boys were known to bully this one particular kid. So the other little boy who was being bullied tried to just walk away, whatever. And these other two kids started pushing and shoving. And they pushed the little boy up against a concrete wall. And the boy hit his head, and he went into a coma. And I think about 3 or 4 days later, he passed away. Now, the parents of those two children said it was all in fun. They were just kidding around. And other students were saying, no, these boys, bullied this little boy all the time. And his mother had gone up to the school to try to keep these two boys away from her son, but the school wouldn't do anything. So now those boys, if I'm correct, they went to something similar of a juvenile detention home, whatever. And the people who were supporting these two bullies said that it was too harsh of a sentence. They didn't know what they were doing. But this other little boy is dead. So could that be classified as a terrorist act? I mean, when does it go from being a bully? Hello, shy lady. When does it go from being a bully to you just kill someone? You may be in sixth or seventh grade, whatever, but you just killed another human being. Crucible man.
Yeah, like I said before, maybe I should paraphrase it differently. Yeah, at that level, when two people are, habitually bullying the same person over a protracted period of time, I don't know how you cannot feel that that person is feeling terror in their heart or in their mind based on that treatment. So again, it's hard for one person to put themselves in the shoes of another person to say, well, one person's terror is another person's, well, we were just kidding around. You have to be in that person's shoes to experience the quote unquote terror. And it's not just the terror they're feeling when the bullying is going on. It's the terror before they go to school in the morning. It's the terror of going to bed the night before, wondering if tomorrow is going to bring the same type of a thing. And when you're that age, your mind is a very vulnerable thing. You're very impressionable. You're very insecure. So I think what is one person's bullying can very, very, very easily translate into another person's terror.
Okay, now I'm going to ask the same question, and I'm going to put that on a teacher level. Do you think, well, I personally believe that there are teachers that are bullies, because I had a teacher in fifth and sixth grade who was a bully, and my son also had a teacher that was a bully. So yes, I fully believe that teachers can be bullies. But do you think that some teachers take it to the next level? Because you do hear stories where some teachers are just relentless on this one particular kid, that no matter what this kid does, this teacher is like bullying them to a level where, like you said, the night before, the kid doesn't want to go to school. So would you, at what point does it elevate from you just being a bully to you being a terrorist? And calling a teacher a terrorist may seem, a little out there, but when it keeps going on and on and on and on, and it may get, worse and worse and worse, at what point again does that teacher go from just being a teacher that bullies to a teacher who is turned into a terrorist?
Well, teachers are a little harder to quantify because of their reputations as, stewards of students and, guidance, people of guidance and counsel and things like that. So similar to priests, their reputation precedes them. So what would clearly be a case of bullying, and I've certainly seen it, and I do believe teachers are absolutely guilty of being capable of being bullies. When I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
That's okay, but you did bring up another point that I want.
Yes, no, I'm sorry. I just remembered. So what a lot of times is actual bullying and intimidation, because teachers, this doesn't get a lot of attention, but teachers have very large egos. Some of them manage them better than others. But I think the idea that somebody would say, well, they're not bullying them, they're simply applying discipline. Well, again, it goes back to one person's discipline is another person's terror. What's coming out of your mouth as a teacher may not be what's being received in the ears of the student. So I think it's a very fine line, and teachers are able to hide behind that disciplinarian, person who's guiding this young mind, and they get away with a lot of things that would not be permissive under environments that don't involve a classroom.
All right, so let's go to priests and pastors and reverends, who molest children, over and over and over. Does that person go from just being someone who is sexually molesting little Johnny to now he's considered a terrorist, because every time little Johnny sees this person, they're scared. So again, could a priest who sexually abuses a child, or reverend or pastor, whatever, be considered a terrorist?
Certainly. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So, Shy Lady, I'm going to ask you if you want to join in the conversation. What do you think? What are your thoughts if you want to join in? If not, I will keep going. Okay. I know it takes a little minute for you guys to. I'm still listening. Oh, I need an invite. You shouldn't need an invite. All right, so here we go. There you go. I sent you an invite. There we go. And Crucible Man, I'm going to mute you. Okay, Shy Lady, you are on.
Okay, I didn't get the first probably 20 minutes. And I know the last few minutes that I came on, you guys were talking about bullies and teachers in the classroom.
Yes.
I know the topic is about terrorists.
Right. But
So,
so basically, I'm wanting to know, when you have the bullies and the teachers in the classroom and priests and what have you, at what point does it go from just being a bully to graduating? Could you consider those people a terrorist? And hello, the dude, Sean, welcome.
well, I guess when I think of terrorists, I think of violence. When I think of terrorists, but I do know that some teachers have put the fear of God in some students. I do know that, but I think when it gets to a point, I mean, I had a situation when I was in the fourth grade. I was bused to an all white school. It was the first year. This is the 70s. And I had a teacher who was very racist. It was a woman. And the few black kids that were bused into this school, we constantly got harassed and spit on, tacks in our seat, tacks in our boots, because we had to, we lived in Chicago, so we had to take our winter boots off and put on shoes. When you get ready to go home, you put your foot in your boot and you find a tack in it. And I remember complaining to this teacher about all the stuff that was done. And she basically started saying, well, we don't want you here anyway. You should have never come here. And I remember saying something back to her, and she slapped me in the face as hard as she could. I
Wow.
have never been slapped in the face ever. And I was so stunned, I couldn't even cry. I couldn't even cry. It was just shocking. Will I call her a terrorist? I would call her a racist and a probably not far removed from being a Klan member, because she was really bad. This woman was probably in her mid 50s at the time. But like I said, when I think of a terrorist, I think of violence, like guns, weapons, things like that, of that nature. But
Okay, but part of the definition of a terrorist also includes mental anguish.
well, then
So,
I guess some people
I
can
mean,
be put in that category then.
because when you look at it, if go to prison, and like waterboarding or something like that, or if you're just told to, they don't let you sleep or anything like that, would that be considered terrorism? So that's why I was asking the question about bullies and what have you, because I think that for some people, yeah, you are bullies, but some people take it to the next level where you could be considered a terrorist. Um, okay, the dude Sean is saying abusive races is a stretch, torture, war crime. No, okay. But I had a teacher, but this particular teacher that I said, fifth and sixth grade, I was in a Lutheran school. So we had combo classes where you had fifth and sixth grade together. And unfortunately, I had this teacher two years in a row. And when I was in sixth grade, I was coming out of band rehearsal, and I was saying something to the band teacher, and the sixth grade teacher didn't like what I said, and he pulled me over, and he slapped me, and he slapped me hard, and then he says, "I'm going to put the belt on you." And we went upstairs, and there was this empty classroom, and he shoved me into the classroom, and he literally started taking off his belt, and I told him, I said, "You're not going to hit me." And he was like, turn around, be quiet, whatever. You were disrespectful to the band teacher. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I literally walked out of the classroom. I went to the seventh and eighth grade classroom where the principal was, and I said that Mr. So and so slapped me, And now he wants to, my words were, beat me with the belt. And I said, I'm not going back into that classroom. I'm going down to the office where I will wait for my father to pick me up, and my mother will be here tomorrow. And my mother was the type of person who, you know, you don't mess with her kids. You know, I may get it when I get home, but you don't mess with her kids, whatever. And my mother, you know, again, Chicago. My mother taught in Indiana, so she was late for work that day. She was upset that she had to go up to school, whatever. And you know, that teacher never said anything to me again. And when I say he never said anything to me, my mother made him apologize in front of the class because the class saw him slap me. When he found out what I said to the band teacher, he saw that he was wrong. And the rest of the school year, it was like the only engagement that teacher and I had was me turning in assignments, and my mother had to look over every assignment that I turned in to make sure that when I got graded on it, by my mother being a teacher, that I was not being graded down. You know, and I think that when you slap, a teacher physically slaps a child, if you're not doing it in self-defense because that child is coming at you, you know, with a weapon, or they're trying to hurt you, whatever, I think that's abuse that could border on terrorism. Now, people may think that I'm crazy for saying that the terrorist part, but I'm sorry. You know, so, you know, that's why I say, at what point does it go from being a bully or being abusive to terrorism? You know, and that's why I ask, you know, you have these priests who are molesting children. You know, at what point does it just go from sexual abuse to terrorism? Because you're physically hurting this person over and over and over, and that person fears you every time they see you. They're like, am I going to have to do this again? You know, or is terrorism just the Taliban, you know, or some, you know, groups here in the U.S. that physically hurt and you know, like Shy Lady said, with guns or what have you. Whew. So does anyone want to comment? Anyone want to come on? Hello, Kimmis. How are you? Thank you for joining today. And Kimmis, I am going to get off topic with you in just a little bit about a previous show. But I want to ask, does anyone have anything they want to say about the terrorist thing? Does anyone think that I'm just really off base by wanting to call a teacher a terrorist? Anybody? No? Okay. Crucible Man, do you have anything you would like to say?
Hello?
Yep. You are unmuted. Do you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, I would just reiterate what I had said earlier. I don't think it's necessarily that terrorism necessarily fits into a particular box. It can be in the eye of the beholder, and then you do kind of run the risk of everything's terrorism and nothing's terrorism. But I think it comes in all shapes and sizes, and I believe one of the things that gets maybe downplayed a little bit, everybody relates to terrorism on a global scale, you know, 9/11 and the Taliban and all those things. That's the easy definition of terrorism. But the micro terrorism type of incidences that go on with kids each day, anytime you're inflicting fear and or terror in the heart or mind of another person, I guess by definition, that qualifies as terrorism. I think we have to be careful with throwing the word around because, as I also said, it runs the risk of being diluted and watered down to where we get into a nobody takes it seriously because the word is used so frequently.
Okay. And I'm looking at some of the comments, and I'm assuming, Dude Sean, you are agreeing with Crucible Man. Okay. Shiley definitely agree with Crucible Man. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So, before I forget and before I lose Chemist, first of all, Chemist, I just want to say that there are times, ever since we had that show on raising daughters and sons, and when I think about that show and I think about you, again, you just made me laugh during that entire show. And I thought it was a lively show. I appreciated your input. But I do believe Crucible Man, if I'm correct, did you want to make a comment to Chemist about that show?
Yeah, I also thought it was very entertaining, and I liked the references about what women and men are not allowed to do in his particular household. And I was just kind of caught off guard by it, because that's the kind of thing you would normally nod your head along and go, well, of course, if it were back in the 60s or the 70s. But considering, the independent nature of women these days, I would think that would be the last thing anybody would sit still for. Tradition be damned, just because they would be afraid of being pigeonholed into a role that they might have been suited for, 50 years or so ago. But I think to break down household roles by sex, I think, is another slippery slope. I think we run the risk of putting people in boxes, and it doesn't really define them, in terms of their whole person.
Okay. And like I said, on this show, we can talk about anything. So, Chemist, did you want to reply to Crucible Man? You have the mic if you would like to use it. It's up to you. Okay, so I will keep going. So, Chemist, if you want to say anything in regards to Crucible Man, you are more than welcome. I'm working on my house at the moment, not a problem. Okay, so I want to go back to the teacher and the terrorist part. So you guys, agreed with Crucible Man. That's cool. So are you guys saying that? Dude Sean said that it's a stretch. Are you saying that there's no room at all? And I don't mean to pigeonhole you at all or pigeonhole any of you. That there's no room at all for someone in the role of a teacher, be they an elementary school teacher, high school professor, whatever, someone who is a teacher. At some point, their actions could not be considered terrorism. Anybody? Crucible Man? Anybody? No?
I want to say,
Okay. Okay, Shiley.
I want to add that I think that in this day and age that we live now, with even parents going to jail for spanking their kids, if someone calls the authorities, a child, be it a child or a neighbor, I think that, excuse me, teachers are very apprehensive to step out of order with the situation that's going on. Some teachers don't touch students because they don't want to be blamed for acts of the thin line. You have to be really careful, and so I think that in this day and age, it's a little bit different than it was back in the 60s and 70s and even maybe the 80s. So I think teachers are more aware and more cautious of the current situation, that if you touch a student, you could be um, let go or even sent to jail. So I think that it's times are a little bit different than they were. So
You make a very good point. So I'm going to ask, do you think that do you think that this contributes to one reason why when parents complain to the school about bullies, that a lot of the times the school just doesn't do anything because they're afraid of being sued or whatever?
um, I think that the school is taking a different role. 'Cause I'll give you an example. Um, my son is now in a private school, but when he was a freshman, he played basketball, and he was actually um, during the preseason of the school year, he was playing with the varsity kids, and he was actually quite good and better than a lot of the varsity players. So they were starting to tease him and harass him. He came home and told us one day. Actually, it happened, I think, once or twice. They took his lunch, and I said, "Now I said they're going too far. That's it." I would tell my son when they started like trying to, make fun of him or whatever, when he would be on the bus riding home from games, just to ignore them. And when they got to the point where they were taking his lunch, my husband and I were like, "Okay, it's time to go talk to the basketball coach, and let's get this nipped in the bud right now. We're going to nip this in the bud right away. We're not going to let this go any further." So we had a meeting with the basketball coach, who happened to also be a teacher at the school. And he had a talk with us, and he said, "I can guarantee you that this will never happen again. I can guarantee you that." He said, "Because we have a zero tolerance for bullyism. The kids will be sent to alternative school. We'll have them out of here so fast they won't even know what hit them. And we will express that to the parents as well." And sure enough, my son never had a problem with any of those kids. They never even said anything to him after that. It was about 3 or 4 of them. They were all seniors. And so I think the school system is taking this very seriously, because these kids are, some of them are committing suicide because of
Mm-hmm.
bullies. So in
Mm-hmm.
the district where my son was in, they took it very seriously.
Okay, and see, and with the whole thing with children, committing suicide, again, you know, um, at what point does the threat level of being a bully, you know, get taken seriously, or, at what point, is it not just, oh, your kid's just a wuss, my kid was just kidding, whatever. But no, at what point, do you say something? Dude, Sean, you have the mic.
Hey, thank you. I'm pretty good.
You're
Pretty
welcome.
good with it. I would like to say that at that point, I think it would be better to maybe perhaps define that child with budding personality disorders for the child. A lot of times, getting back to teachers real quick. The last one I dated, not to make it about me, but definitely had a lot of things going on in the closet in her personal life, acting out criminally for sure. And you could tell it was like, oh well, now I'm putting on my executive persona here, and then heading into the world. It's still like that's like a psychopathic nature. The teachers can't touch the kids, but they can rock their mind, especially teachers known for their intellect. They're very sharp. They're pretty much working through textbook every day. It's nothing for them to work circles around a kid. I'm not saying that all of them by chance, but at least when I was in school, like a thing was always like, if you don't graduate, you're gonna flip burgers. If you don't go to college, and you're gonna go to jail, and when you're in jail, you're gonna get raped by men. I'm like, what? Looking back on that, I'm like, why was that ever a motivator? And then moving forward
Mhm.
with the bullies, like those are still children, and they're unsettled children. Like, believe it or not, I was worse than what the things you mentioned. Like, taking a lunch was probably nothing. That was like warm ups. Um, but then as adult, I'm like looking back, I definitely probably should have been removed. So, I don't really, I'm a little bit all over the place, but I think we have to also watch out with this word stretch thing, when we're making words fit what we want, because then we start to have not clear definitions. If you want to, there is the verb of terrorizing somebody, but they don't have like the political or religious extreme motives
Okay.
like a terrorist group or terrorist would have. So these are just like your basic thug or psychopathic person, or people may be acting out that way, and maybe they don't go down that road, but typically that's what's happening. And another thing to add is you see this more often. So it used to be the minimum, like the minority was the psychopath and or narcissistic personality cluster B disordered persons. I'm thinking with the phone addictions and how checked out people are, and the way things are, an addiction that covers every demographic, age group, ethnic background, religion, you name it, is the phone addiction. Even babies work an iPad. So, where I'm going with that is, sorry, I lost my train of thought, was like we're starting to see like more than 50%. In my opinion, a majority of persons have these tendencies, and now, especially with everything that's going on in the immediate, I'm being vague intentionally. Um, I think everybody has taken a little bit of a ransack to their psyche and their cognitive abilities. So don't be surprised if the next generation and what's left of this one isn't really crazy. And it's not their fault,
Well,
too. It's not their fault.
no. I mean, I think you've made some very good points, and I think that with what's going on in the world, people's psyche has been affected. I mean, I know mine has. How I see things, and how I view things, because for me, being an African American, I see things that are just more in my face, than I did 10 years ago, than I did 20 years ago. Um, um, but, has my psyche been affected? Sure, it has. It has. And how could it not? Then with the pandemic and everything, whatever side of the fence you fall on, I mean, it's affected people in different ways. But I will agree with you and Crucible Man and Shy Lady, that the word stretch, and to fit your definition, what have you. But when it comes to teachers, and even for some children, I've just seen that take is the bullying has just gone to the next level. So, but
If you don't mind me adding just real quick one thing,
mhm.
I'd like to say, as far as the word stretch and we have to be very careful with this, because you also see this recently, before everything with the pandemic. We were heading down the road where everything was being quickly ushered into hate speech, to when then you started to see very elaborate censorship on the internet, which brings me to this site, which brings us to this conversation in the first place. So that's why I'm on Podbean, was to avoid censorship. So we have to watch out for our rights as citizens, our right for free speech. And one thing, that word stretch stuff, especially coming from up down, that's not in our best interest. That's social engineering. We really have to be firm in how we define these kind of things. Otherwise, we're just going to get pushed around, and then we're really going to get bullied. Where we have people using our own rights against us, and claiming hate speech and throwing into prison and stuff for like basic stuff. I mean, of course, there's hate, and it's definitely racism is still alive. I'm not saying that, but we all know when there's the difference for the most part. Like, in our heart of hearts, we know the difference, and we're seeing a lot of like policing of us used against us. This is not for the good of us getting along. There's more rules and more control, in my opinion. And then getting back to the teachers one more time before I forget, that's right, they can't touch them, but I sure remember there, even in middle school, I had a teacher search me and search my pocket. It was the main assistant principal. And in the 80s, we'd be rocking some tight jeans. There's no way she couldn't have seen a bar of soap in my back pocket and those heavy metal jeans I was wearing that day. But both hands went in both pockets at the same time, skin tight jeans, squeeze, hold, and release. Now in sixth grade, it only took the wind to blow the right direction to get aroused. You know what I'm saying? So these teachers, it's like a playground for some of these like closet sickies. And just think, they're going home to a family and they're going home to a husband. Some of them be flirting with middle school and high school all day long and playing with their brains, making it think it's the kid's fault. These things happen, even little subtle stuff like a little bit of cleavage at the wrong right time or whatever. Like there's an element to that psychological covert psychopath behavior, and it's running rampant. Judges, teachers, doctors now, especially Fauci, and we see it everywhere. So, final thought. Thank you for having me on. Especially since I'm so new to your program, I'm definitely following right now, and I suggest everybody else do. And if you don't mind, come catch me at 8 Eastern time here on the Podbean with Writer's Block, where you really gonna see me take control of the mic. Thank you.
All right. Can you put that the name of your show into the chat, and I can write it down.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, hey Angie, my show, as long as people are being civil, I have no problem giving people the mic. So yeah, good to see you Angie. So does anybody else have anything that they want to say in what the dude was saying? Anyone want to reply to that? He made some very good points. Anybody? Okay. So, again, you guys, I appreciate you guys listening, and I appreciate, everyone coming on and, making their point, whether you agree or you disagree. I always appreciate the fact that we can always keep the conversations civil. So that is something that, again, I will always, give the mic to you. But I appreciate more than anything that we can have a civil, talk, discussion. So 8 p.m. Eastern, the dude Sean, okay, let me write this down. All right. So, Angie, you're coming in a little bit late, and I know it's late there where you are over in Scotland. We were talking about terrorism, and then it turned into teachers and bullies, and like this show does. But thank you for coming towards the last part. Just to for the end, I just want to say that in terms of terrorism, however you define it, or bullying, whatever, social media definitely has played a huge role in the level of the way bullies interact, the way terrorists interact. Social media has a lot to do with it. So, I wish that we can get back to a time, when I was growing up, I was born in the 60s, I was a child of the, in terms of high school and what have you, the 70s. I wish we could go back to a time where we didn't have social media. I think that um, uh, things would be easier. Things would be simpler. Um, I don't think that our uh, society would be in the position that we are now if it weren't for social media. Um, it took a lot for me to get on social media. I mean, I resisted social media for a long time. And then when I started to, do various things, with business and things in my town, what have you, I had to get on Facebook. Um, I am someone I do tweet whatever, but I resisted social media for a long time. I resisted getting a smartphone for a long time because I didn't want to be part of that um, uh, crowd, and I see what social media, in my opinion, is destroying our children. My son, I didn't allow him to get a smartphone until he was 16. If he had a cell phone, he had a flip phone. If you need to call someone, it's an emergency, that phone is fine. But I think that our society, our world has just really just taken a left turn and just going the wrong way. And it allows bullies and terrorists to flourish. And that's my own personal opinion. And there's too much pornography on there. There is. Social media has gotten way out of hand, is what Shy Lady says. Thank you, Duke, for saying this is a great show. I'm just looking at the comments here. So I am done. That's all I've got. Let's see, do you think social media is here to stay? What Shy Lady says. Yes, unfortunately, like reality shows, I think social media is here to stay. It is not going anywhere. There's too much money in social media. There's too much money. Social media promotes cowardice. What Crucible Man says. Yes, it does. Things that you would not say to someone to their face, or whatever, you say it on social media. Dude Sean followed everyone here. Thanks. That was very nice of you. Very cool. So does anyone have anything to say what Shy Lady says? Do you think social media is here to stay? Does anyone want to make a comment on that? And Angie says definitely. So yeah, it is not going anywhere. It is not going anywhere. So, all right, everyone. That's all I've got. Thank you for coming. I hope everyone enjoys their day. I am Solid Blue Sister. This is my turn to talk. Always speak your truth. And I will see you tomorrow. Bye.
Same time.
Same time.
Okay.
1:00 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Oh, I'm over on the East Coast, Eastern Standard Time, 8 p.m.
So that's you're on the East Coast.
Yeah.
4 o'clock, because it's 2:00 now.
Yeah, it's 5.
5 o'clock. Yeah.
So if you just go live on Friday night, and I'm not trying to plug my thing. I just want you to know. Because I have a bunch of identities. Because typically I am a handful, so I've been banned a lot. But this is like my main one, and then I have the other one, Dudesky Chauncey Brilliant. But if you go live and look all the way to the top, it'll be there. It'll be there.
I will definitely check you out. I do not stream on Fridays. I'm only Monday through Thursday, but I will definitely check you out, and I will listen to some of your recordings.
Okay, thank you. How about this? I'll check you out. Let me develop a friendship with you first, and then I'll go ask you to come see my show. How about that?
Okay, cool. And I will. I've written down your show, so yeah.
Cool.
But you have to stop getting banned, okay?
That's what I'm saying.
You don't want to be in pod being jail. I've been in Twitter jail a couple of times, so I know that it's not fun.
Yeah, they don't feed you there.
They don't feed you. They definitely don't.
Okay, well, you have a great rest of the evening. Thanks for having me on again. Bye now.
All right. Thank you. Bye. All right, everyone. And the song is ending. And that's it. Have a good one. Bye.